Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the TDS Hayden Chamber Virtual Business Breakfast. I'm Anita Pariseau, incoming Vice President of the Hayden Chamber of Commerce for 2021, the one election where there was no dispute. Sorry, just had to say that. Our guest speaker this morning is Sam Walkenhauer, labor economist with the Idaho Department of Labor. He'll be speaking today about the COVID economy. In addition to providing the communities of North Idaho with economic information and analysis, SAM operates several forecasting projects for the Department of Labor and creates projections of Idaho's labor market and demographics. Prior to joining the Department of Labor, he earned degrees in mathematics and economics from Eastern Washington University. In his free time, Sam enjoys studying Russian history and learning the Russian language. Please welcome Sam.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be sharing a PowerPoint with everybody. So there's a little chat here. So if anyone could just tell me if the PowerPoint disappears or if we have connectivity issues, that would be great. Otherwise, I'm just going to proceed as if everyone can see the slides. What I'm going to do for everybody this morning is just You can't hear me, Candy?
No.
Okay. I gave it microphone permissions and it says that I'm not muted.
Okay, I can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint?
No, I see myself and you. And now I see the PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So, yeah, this is why we're all anxious to go back to in-person as soon as possible. So what I'm going to do for everybody is give a brief overview, essentially, of what has happened to the economy. Is the admin or the manager, whoever's in charge of the presentation, doing anything? Because I didn't change anything.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, kind of cutting in and out.
Yes, and
Okay.
Kyle's managing it.
Okay. So we're just going to jump right in. I'll give an overview of what's happened this year and then kind of give a forecast of where we think things are going to go in 2021. So probably the easiest way to look at this is to give a comparison of Idaho and the rest of the country. Both our state and the United States economy at large essentially shut down in April. That was when we really saw all the damage happening in the job market. And so what I'm showing you here is the change in total employment on a year-over-year basis. And I set this graph to go all the way back to 2008 so that you can see it, COVID, on the same chart as the housing crash. Because we all remember that the housing crash and the recession that started in 2008 was quite terrible at the time. And when we look at these things on the same chart, you can see that COVID really blew the housing crisis out of the water in terms of the number of jobs that we lost. So at the peak, Idaho was down about 7% during the housing crisis. We were down 10% in COVID, and all of that happened in 1 month, as opposed to being spaced out over the course of several years. In the United States, the total national economy, we lost about 15% of our jobs in 1 month. So there's really no precedent for a crash this big and this fast. That's what makes it so significant. Normally, when you have this kind of damage to the labor market, it would be spread out over many years. In this case, all this unemployment hit all at once. Now, since then, Idaho has done significantly better than the rest of the country at our reopening. So you can see Idaho is the blue line. We're almost back to the break-even point. we're still down about 2.5%, and there are obviously variations around the state. But Idaho is without a doubt doing the best of any state in terms of our reopening. So when you look at how well we've bounced back, we have the highest recovery level of any state in the country. And the only state that can really compete with us happens to be our neighbor to the south, which is Utah. And if you look at the rest of the country, you know, they're still down about 8%. So the rest of the country is still mired in a very deep recession, but Idaho has mostly been able to bounce back. Now, you initially might assume that this is due to how strict or not strict our lockdown orders were, but we actually don't think that that's it. And the reason is there are states that did not have any lockdown orders whatsoever. So, for example, Iowa had no enforced social distancing orders, and yet Idaho is doing significantly better than those states as it relates to the labor market. So the reason for this seems to be a combination of two things. First off, it just has to do with kind of the attitude of the population, how willing they are to get back to normal quickly. Because in some states where they didn't enforce social distancing, you had a lot of voluntary social distancing, which has the same impact on the economy with people staying home and not spending money. Idaho has seemed to be much more willing to get back to normal as fast as possible. But the second thing driving this just seems to be the fact that Idaho is where people wanted to be when COVID started, and then you had some civil unrest over the summer, forest fires, right? We know that this has just kind of been a troublesome year, and Idaho seems to benefit from that. People view this as the place they want to be. If you look at what's happened with our home prices and the number of people moving here over the summer, you can understand how that would really help us bounce back faster. So we're benefiting from population growth. So we want to balance these kind of two understandings that in Idaho, things are going pretty well. Our labor market's recovering pretty nicely. It's not quite back to where we want it to be, but all things considered, relative to other states, we feel very strong about where we are in Idaho. Now, at the same time, we also want to be aware that the national economy is still quite sick. It's still quite lethargic. So what I'm showing you here is the number of permanent job losses suffered for this recession in red, and then you can see the other recessions that we've had recently. So the housing crisis is in green there. And so what you can see is we're ahead of the pace. So that's what I mean when I say that all this damage has happened really, really quickly. Now, it's important. The job losses that I'm showing you here, these are permanent job losses. So what that means is this reflects a small business that is closed. This is not a temporary layoff due to lockdown orders and then everybody's going to get called back. These are not furloughed workers. This is a total separation, a closed business. And so these are jobs that are going to take a long time to recover. Small business formation takes time. So there's been a lot of scarring to the national economy. So we want to balance these two facts that on the one hand, Idaho's doing very well relative to the rest of the country, but on the other hand, we're floating on a choppy sea, so to speak, when you look at what's happened with the national job market. And we know that Idaho is not a huge economy, right? We're maybe 1% of the national economy. So we're pleased that we're outrunning the rest of the country, but that's not something that we can just rely on and bank on that we're going to be a continual overperformer, because we do rely on other states. There's complicated supply networks and tourism and connected housing markets. So we want to be aware that the sea underneath us is choppy at the moment. The other thing we need to be aware of is that the economy right now is receiving very heavy support from the federal government. So in a normal, healthy economy, you might have somewhere between 1 and 3 million people drawing unemployment benefits. And you can see that where the line is very low back in February and March when everything was normal. And then COVID starts to happen. And you have this rapid expansion of unemployment benefits. And this is not just as people get laid off. This also reflects the fact that the federal government created several new unemployment assistance programs specifically to combat the pandemic and the associated recession. So basically, in the space of a month to a month and a half, the number of Americans on unemployment explodes from about 2 million to over 30 million. And that number has come down, but it has not come down nearly enough. So right now, we still have something like 20 million Americans who are drawing some sort of unemployment benefit. And that's really important because this money is mainly going to prop up kind of basic household expenses. When they look at how people are spending their unemployment benefits, it's mainly going to food, rent, basic bills like that. So this has been really important for propping up the economy. We know that the economy is sick right now, but we can imagine how much worse it would be if 30 million people had just lost all their income and only had, basic state benefits to cover them. So this has been really big. Now, the other thing that is very important to know, and the reason I bring this up is I'm not trying to tell everybody you need to write a thank you note to the federal government for saving the economy. The reason this is important to know is that a lot of these benefits are going to expire at the end of December. We still have a lot of people drawing them. So the programs like the Pandemic Assistance Fund, these were designed to expire at the end of December. And without commenting on the political situation, we know that January in an inauguration year is not a particularly productive month for the government anyway, just because there's that transition going on. So it's kind of bad timing that all these benefits are going to expire at the same time you have the transition happening. So we're pretty confident, and if you look at the consensus from economists, there's a lot of confidence that there's going to be a re-upping of these packages next year. The question is how much damage the economy might suffer in the delay, the lag between the end of December when these expire and when they can be renewed, because that's a lot of Americans that are relying on these benefits to meet their basic expenses. So this has helped the economy a lot in 2020, but we want to be aware that we're kind of headed for a rocky patch as we hit a cliff with all these benefits. So what you can see is that these benefits from the federal government have really done a great job backstopping the economy. So just a little look at how we think about household income. We divide household income into 3 different categories. They're pretty easy to understand. So the largest category is wages and salaries. That's in the blue. That's the easiest to understand. That's just your job income, earned income. Investments in red includes your 401k, but also if you own rental properties, dividends, things like that, and then transfer payments. And in a normal year, the largest source of transfer payments would be Social Security. So this includes everything like that, all the entitlements, pensions, etc. Well, in Q2 of 2019, so that's last year, transfer payments were only about 16% of all the household income in the United States. In Q2 of this year, they ballooned to 26%. So that's a gain of 10 percentage points in terms of the composition of household income, and that's all unemployment insurance benefits. So that huge shift in the source of income that households are relying on, that big shift to transfer payments, that's all derived from the expansion of the unemployment insurance benefits. And at the same time, you can see that wages and salaries shrank quite a bit, from 65 to 57 percentage points. So what this reflects is something on the order of 20 million Americans being laid off, their wage and salary income goes to zero, and they are relying on unemployment benefits and other rescue programs to offset that. So this change in the pie, so to speak, represents that huge shift from wage and salary to unemployment insurance. And this was crucial for backstopping the economy, because in Q2, wage and salary income shrank by 8%. So just imagine the shape the economy would be in if, in addition to everything else going on, we had also just had to kind of eat an 8% drop in household income. We'd be in very rough shape. You'd have a lot more problems with foreclosures, stress on like food aid systems. So this aid from the federal government has been really important for propping up household spending. specifically because COVID has been a recession. And I'm speaking specifically from the economic perspective of what's happened. It has not affected everybody equally. So let's look at what happens if you kind of look at unemployment and you divide it up by how much money people were making. So for people making more than $16 an hour, and we're looking at how much money you were making in February before COVID started. For people making more than $16 an hour, most of those jobs have come back. If you were earning in the $20 an hour range, odds are if you lost your job over the summer, you probably have gotten it back. Most of these jobs have recovered. For people earning less than $16 an hour, that's not the case. 1 out of 5 people who were earning less than $16 an hour are still unemployed. So this is really important to understand because we need to be aware that the COVID phenomenon, really 2020, has been experienced very differently by different people. So for some people, 2020 has primarily been an economic crisis. That's the main impact that they're feeling. They've been unemployed basically all year. Maybe they're attached to a small business that is closed and they really don't have a good prospect for getting back to work soon. And so if you're on the blue line, odds are you're more concerned about the economy than you are about the health implications of the virus. For higher earners, and these tend to be people in the professional class who are more readily able to work remotely, work from home, you're probably more concerned about the public health aspect of the crisis. And so we need to be aware that all the decisions we make, we're making trade-offs between an economic and a public health kind of side of the coin. And I don't have answers about what the correct policies are. That's not my job, but it helps to be aware that all these decisions are trade-offs between economic costs and public health costs. And so we need to be aware of that, and we need to be aware that in 2020, people are suffering in many different ways, that this has not kind of been a uniform experience. And let's be honest, we know some people who have kind of sadistically enjoyed this year because they get to work in their sweats and they order their food. They order Jimmy John's and food from Grubhub, and they do all their shopping on Amazon anyway. So 2020 has been very different for different people, and we need to be aware of that. And we especially need to be aware that this recession is impacting low-income Americans disproportionately. It is also disproportionately impacting women. So this is the other dimension that I want to talk about. So these charts show you the labor force participation rate for men and for women. And you can see that for both genders, there's a big drop off in April as people get laid off and they drop out of the labor force. However, for men, the labor force participation rate has been increasing pretty steadily over the summer. You kind of have a check mark shape here. For women, you got a little bounce over the summer, but then it's flatlined. And so this is really important. Women are more likely to be out of the labor force right now due to COVID than men are. That's just a statistical observation. We're still trying to puzzle out why exactly this is. It seems pretty clear that it has something to do with school closures. There are estimates from the, I believe it's the Bureau of Economic Analysis, might be the National Bureau of Economic Research. There's too many bureaus, right? One of the bureaus has estimated that there's somewhere between 800,000 and 1.5 million women who are out of the labor force specifically because their children have not been able to go back to school. Obviously, that's nationally, not for Idaho, but you can understand why this would be the case. Not only are women far more likely to be single mothers are more common than single fathers, so women are more likely to be affected on that dimension, but also even within married households, women are more likely to choose to stay home. And I'm not saying this is good or bad, this is just a statistical observation. So COVID has disproportionately affected the female side of our workforce. Now that's important because men and women are not uniformly allocated throughout the economy. Some industries are male dominated, some industries are dominated by women. For example, healthcare. In healthcare, women make up a strong majority of workers. So you can understand how if more women are getting sucked out of the labor force than men, this is going to impact some industries more than others. Conversely, if you imagine that we had a scenario where half of the men dropped out of the labor force and women weren't affected, that would affect construction disproportionately. So the reason these gender imbalances matter is because some industries are dominated by women, and so it's obviously a bad thing if we're losing them out of the labor force. That's bad for those industries. So this is something that we want to be aware of. Finally, I want to briefly comment on where we're headed going forward. The virus has been spiking again. We all have seen the case numbers. And so a lot of states have already begun to renew or tighten their social distancing requirements, Idaho being one of them. We're back to stage 2, I believe. So that's why we're doing this virtual right now. I forgot we were scheduled for in person. So this has really impacted small business confidence. So in May and July, I kind of spaced this out a couple months apart. Small businesses were pretty confident that they would be able to survive whatever the duration of the lockdown was. So roughly 3/4 of small businesses were confident they would survive. You can see that in November, this has taken a sharp turn for the worse, because now we're looking at a kind of a fresh return to where we were in April. A lot of the rescue loans that were available have already been used up. And so there is kind of a growing pessimism among small businesses that they will not be able to survive a second round of closures and extended idling. So that 3/4 rate has shrunk down to 60% of small businesses now answer that they're confident they'll be able to survive. So again, small business confidence is not necessarily, they could be wrong. Hopefully a lot of them are wrong, and we don't suffer too many more small business closures. But this is kind of a good bellwether for the general mood surrounding the economy. So we do want to be aware that we went through something pretty traumatic over the summer. We had a huge spike in unemployment. Things are looking better. However, we're not out of the woods yet, because there is an economic crisis right now that has its own momentum independent of the virus. And even if everybody was vaccinated tomorrow and the virus disappeared, there's a lot of scarring that has occurred to the economy. There's a lot of businesses that have closed. There's a lot of households that have had to eat into their savings. And so this is not something that we're going to bounce back from instantaneously, even if the virus just vanished overnight. So let's kind of summarize some of the things we talked about. There's really no other way to put it. Idaho is doing about as well as you can expect, given everything that's happened. We've had a much faster reopening. Our job market has recovered much faster, and we can attribute that to both the can-do attitude of our citizenry and also in-migration kind of helping us get open faster. However, we're still floating on a national economy that's very fragile. And so we talked about some of these things. There's been a lot of small business closures. A lot of jobs have been lost permanently. Those jobs are going to take a long time to get back. And this is also an economy that's still pretty dependent on a lot of aid from the federal government. And unfortunately, that aid is going to expire at the end of December. So it's not unreasonable to expect the first quarter of 2021 to be a choppy one, while we wait for a renewal of those aid programs. And finally, we want to be aware that this is a subjective recession that has treated people differently. So depending on your age and what you do for a living, 2020 might have been predominantly about the virus and about health and being worried about being sick. Or it could have been primarily about losing your job and losing your income. So depending on who you are, this was either a story about health or a story about the economy, which is why you know, if you looked at the exit polls from the presidential election, you saw that the virus and the economy were, generally speaking, the two biggest issues facing voters. And you can kind of imagine how, depending on where you are and what you do for a living, one of these issues dominates the other in terms of what you're worried about. So to recap it all, we're relatively pleased with how Idaho is doing. We don't want to, you know, there hasn't been a ton of good news in 2020, so we don't want to spin our good news into more bad news. Idaho is leading the pack for the recovery, and we're very pleased about that. But there's still some choppy times ahead. And so right now, kind of the consensus is that we're looking at 2 to 3 years before the national economy can recover back to the path we were on before COVID hit. So the feedback I keep getting is that people liked listening to me much better 2 years ago when everything was awesome. But you know, I don't make the news. So I'd be happy to take some questions. I think we have a little time for a couple questions.
Sam, I opened it up to the Facebook group here to see if they have any questions. I do think, though, that you made a very good point about the correlation about school. I think that's very important because I've observed parents juggling these various phases and going from all-day school, 2-day school, part-time school. What do I do with my kids? Do I take them to school? Do I take them to work with me? Do they work in jobs that the kids can go or not?
Absolutely.
It's been a challenge.
Tough choices for everybody, unfortunately. If there's no questions, I assume
Yes.
that means it was awesome and everybody's completely satisfied.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you, Sam. We appreciate your efforts, and we will know that you're there working for us on our behalf. And hopefully next time we
Absolutely.
have you
Thank you.
visit with us, we'll be in person. Thank you. Okay. Well, Sam, thank you so much. And we are now going to the portion where we are having our trade table. So I know we're going to attempt this morning. And Vicki Jo, are you with us? Or Anita? Sorry, Anita, do you have a trade table for us?
My office table for you.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to let y'all know. I wanted to just take this opportunity to say thank you, Candy, and to the Hayden Chamber Board for allowing me to substitute our table last month for turkeys and more. They have exceeded their goal, so we will actually have plenty of turkeys and plenty of things to give out with money left over for next year. So from the bottom of my heart, and I know from the bottom of Evie's heart too, thank you so very much. You guys are the reason I love living here. So that's the only update I have, other than to say I hope you guys all have a blessed and wonderful Thanksgiving.
Okay, well, thank you, Anita. And for TDS, we really appreciate you guys and all that you're doing in our community. And we do have a trade table volunteer this morning, and that's Vicki Jo Carey with the Salvation Army Kroc Center. So Vicki Jo, go for it.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this beautiful rainy morning we're having here. Just a couple of updates. We are still planning on having ringing at our locations. And like COVID has affected all of you, it has affected our donation or our raising money season here with the bell ringing. So we really do need your help. So there's lots of ways you can help us. You can still volunteer to ring at one of the locations. Just give us a call or go online at kroccda.org and you can sign up to ring. You can make your own virtual kettle online. And with that, your friends all over the United States, all over the world, wherever they are, they can donate to your own kettle, and that money stays right here in our 5 counties. So that's a great, great way to do it. Or if you want, just a moment, I will bring to your office your own private or your business, wherever, your own private little counter kettle. Just call me. I'll come and bring it. I'll come and pick it up when it's full and bring you another one. So any of those ways would be wonderful. We really need your help. The community really needs your help at this time. And then just one other thing, on December 1st, which is Giving Tuesday, we're having our Mayor's Day competition, I guess you would call it, at the Kettles. And instead of being at locations, they're going to be in our roundabout out here. We're going to have singing. We're going to have some Disney characters there. And then we're going to have little treats that we're going to give to everybody who comes by and donate. All you have to do is drive through and support your local mayor, because it's a contest between them.
Mhm.
So you want to get out and support your mayor. So thank you all very much for all that you do for us all through the season and for the help you're going to give us now.
And Vicky Jo, what time is the mayor's?
11 to 1 on
11
December
to 1.
1st.
December 1st. Okay, we'll make sure we promote that. And also, is December 16th for Chamber Day still on?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so we will be ringing the bell at Super One in Hayden, and we've got a team ready to go. And I'd like to check out that virtual kettle because we'd like to participate in that as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Just go to croccda.org, and it's very simple. Gives you instructions on how to do it. And then you can share it with all your friends, like I said, anywhere. And if they live in Florida or if they live over in Brazil, they can donate and it comes to you and stays in your community.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for participating today. Wish we could have been in person, but this was fun too.
Thanks, Candy.
Thank you, Vicky Jo.
Thank you, everyone.
And now we just have we have some new members that we'd like to share with you before we finalize our production this morning. Our new members that we have this month are North Idaho Direct Primary Care. They joined at a silver level. Dr. Jenna Silikowski is located at 8880 Hess Street, Unit 1 in Hayden. Dr. Silikowski is the only direct primary care physician in Hayden, providing quality family medicine in a new model of care that takes out the middleman. It's just you and the doctor. And you will be hearing more about her. We're doing a profile piece on her that we'll be sharing virtually pretty soon. Our second new member at a silver level also is Sherwin-Williams Company. Lou Wolf is there to meet all of your needs for paint and coatings, and they're located at 355 West Prairie Shopping Center in the Hayden Plaza there. They're very near the food row there area and by the movie theater. And our third member that came in at a bronze level is the Buy Local Media Group. Jen Dillon is anxious to help you with offering an online digital marketing platform that supports locally owned businesses in our community. And you'll be hearing more about her as well because we're doing a profile piece on her. And our last new member for this month is the Hayden Professional Building at a silver level. Roxanne Spalding is the owner of that building. They are located at 8475 North Government Way, and they offer 8 offices for professional use. And if they have an opening, make sure to check them out for leasing space. Our upcoming events, we did a wonderful ribbon cutting yesterday with some of our new members, and you'll be seeing those pictures coming out today. Our next ribbon cutting is December 2nd on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. We're going to be at Thomas Hammer over there in Hayden. And we have our monthly board meeting coming up on December 3rd. As we mentioned, December 16th is Chamber Day at the Kettle. And lastly, our next breakfast is December 17th. It'll be a focus on nonprofits. We will be definitely offering it virtual. We may be in person, we don't know, but it will be virtual for sure. Thank you so much, and you guys make it a great day.